Hi, welcome to Detours Understanding Acquired Brain Injury. And with us, of course, as you can see, we have Emily. She is one of our recurring hosts, and we're going to talk about ways to help your mental health, especially after a brain injury, because the methods you've had for coping many times just don't work like they used to. And if you struggle with a history of mental illness, and now you add a brain injury to that, it really kind of not only can magnify the problems you've had before, it can then also make a lot of strategies you've learned and ways that you've approached things not effective for you anymore. And then if you throw a sudden crisis in, not just a mental health crisis, but a family emergency or a sudden surprise change or things like that, it really can throw you for a heck of a loop. Emily, hi.
Hello.
So, can we talk a little bit about, something recent and, like what you've learned, coping strategies, stuff like that?
Absolutely. So recently I found out that my son, who I adopted out when I was much younger, has been diagnosed with a desmoid tumor in his back and been very difficult processing that. I kind of went into a downward spiral where I was avoiding everybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was just burying my head under the blanket. Like nobody else existed, which is not typically how I would have dealt with things prior to the brain injury. I would have been trying to reach out to people and get the support that I needed. And now I'm like, because of the brain injury, I feel like it's so much more of a burden on other people. Because I'm just so much more emotional now.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that with the brain injury, it makes like coping much harder. We become overloaded much faster, much easier. The inhibitions and controls and all those things, many of those like strategies that we've learned, the ways that we've and the ability to plan, think ahead, organize, all that stuff, the executive problems again, are lost. And so, we don't have those skills that require, like self-management and things like that. And so, we just tend to shut off. Overload and then there's neurofatigue, things like that. So, hopefully you've learned, like relearned at least, like reach out. There are people who care, love you, and like can help you. Um,
Yes, yes, there was a lot of support shown, even when I wasn't speaking, and that meant the world to me because I haven't really had people who will support me still, even though I was injured. Um, it's kind of like a lot of people just kind of pushed me away. So finding a new group of friends who I can relate with has done wonders for my mental health. There are things that have been really bad and then things that have been good. So I feel like it's really a balancing act for me right now, trying to get used to how my brain functions now because it's so.
yeah, it is. And after brain injury, it's like we are 8 times, I've said this a billion times, and I'm going to say it again and again, 2 billion more. We are 8 times more likely to be depressed and 6 times more likely to have problems with anxiety. And as a result of that, we are definitely, we struggle with like, you, you know, not only the problems of the brain injury that it gives us, but also then the depression and the anxiety. And it's hard sometimes to distinguish between apathy and, a dynamic, the lack of drive, the lack of go, from symptoms of a depression. In fact, it's the apathy and the adynamia is sometimes called pseudo depression because it looks an awful lot like it, but um, there's little emotion in it. Whereas with true depression and things like that, there is a lot of emotion in it, and but it's subjective, so it's hard to pick apart. And it's like it's not reactive to medication, so it's important to like try to, and you can push a person with adynamia and apathy and they respond, whereas person with depression is really hard to push to engage, and that's one of the other ways to pick it out. But yeah, um
It's definitely difficult. Like even small tasks can just seem so big now. Like, oh, I have to go to the grocery store and it's some big to do. Like it really isn't. But for me, it is.
well, definitely. And that's a problem just because of the brain injury. A lot of people find going to the grocery store daunting for a lot of reasons: sensory overload, need to be organized, need to find stuff, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, that's yeah. So how do you deal with that? I'm just curious how you deal with it. I've talked to others about how they deal with grocery shopping, but how do you deal with that from your
definitely
brain injury?
like writing out an actual list as opposed to doing it on the phone or things like that. I tend to remember better.
Mhm.
Um, but also I have the list right there, scratch it out. And there's something about physically doing that
Yes.
that helps me. I don't know what that's about, but writing has definitely become like necessary because that way at least I have some kind of reminder from writing it out. Like, oh yeah, there's something I'm supposed to do. Let me go get my paper, look at my board. Um, and that was a suggestion by one of our other hosts, and it's been really helpful.
Here's why. You have an area of your brain dedicated to writing. It's called Exner's area. You do not have an area of your brain dedicated to texting. It's kind of like reading, but you have a region of your brain. So it kind of forces more of your nervous system to engage. Writing, calculation, all that. There are areas dedicated, angular gyres, Exner. So it involves more parts of your brain when you physically write. Clicking keys is just a simple motor area, motor
Yeah,
control. There's no dedicated area because we haven't been around long enough, and we certainly haven't been typing long enough as a species to develop an area dedicated to typing. But we have been around long enough that there is a section of the brain that has evolved for the purpose of coordinating for writing letters and stuff like that. Yes, we've been around for long enough for that. So we do have an area that's kind of dedicated for that. That's why writing, handwriting, is more effective in reinforcing learned behaviors.
yeah, yeah. I've noticed that's huge for me. It really does help. So
And that's why it helps. Because it uses a dedicated area of your brain as opposed to just clicking some keys. And it
yeah,
requires you to repeat it. And as you talk about it, and then you repeat it in the form of writing. So you do it 2 or 3 times as opposed to, like one continuous thing. So you've got
right.
multiple reinforcements in your brain. So it is healthy to do it that way. But yeah, um, really being physically engaged, especially those any of us with brain injury of any sort, however we have it, whether it's TBI or anything else, it's much better for us to do it, you know, like to physically engage in our world. Being passive is the worst thing you can do with a brain injury, and unfortunately, it's like depression kind of like doubles down, and anxiety doubles down on making recovery much harder and progress much harder. What you're
Yeah,
doing right now and what I'm doing right now is like one of the best ways to fight it. And not only depression and anxiety, but to also fight, brain injury for healing.
yeah, yeah. I'm definitely my fine motor skill just from writing. Like, oh, this is so much better because the dexterity in my hands is just whew, trying to open bottles and things. it's more difficult than it was before. My fingers
Right.
just weird. They just don't function like they used to.
No, that's not a surprise. Frontal lobe injuries usually also involve motor skills because that's all part of the frontal lobe. And the coordination, probably a little bit of cerebellar injury too, not unusual. And all those systems are kind of wired together. And so, it's like, but all of these things can help improve your mood if you're physically engaged, if you're mentally doing stuff, and the more like offbeat, kind of, if something's kind of a little different or offbeat, it helps too, because it forces you to engage more of your brain.
That's very true. Yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's a better way to kind of rewire
Yep.
what I have going on in my brain. You know, it hasn't been that long since I received whatever you want to call it, got my TBI.
Yep. Survived. Survivor is the term since you survived your brain injury.
Yeah.
Um, as Kate and I talked about in one of our videos, we talk about, the gifts of brain injury, and there are others who talk about it. Debbie, she makes reference. The other Debbie, not T, the one who got hers when she was in high school. Um, she makes reference to the fact that, it's like it's about attitude in the end. Like if you keep a positive mindset, if you like maybe keep a gratitude journal, what things you're grateful for in life, positive mindset. And so did Joyce, who's a stroke survivor. She talks about that, and it helps shift. And so like one, and this is part of the reason why I do videos too, is to engage different people, to interact, to learn from them. I mean, just hearing you like, and some of the things. I mean, you're the Renaissance Fair theme, and you're doing the fairy thing, and it's like I really like that. I think it's cool. That's why we'll keep doing it this way. I think it's a way to engage people, and it's like fun and cute, and you know, um, you know, encourages openness, and like it's a way of being different. I need to find a character of my own. Maybe a Doc Brown, kind of.
That was perfect for you.
Yeah, Blake suggested it. Blake's not feeling well lately, and his stuff. But he said he wants to do like a football player, and I think that would be fun. And definitely the elf character. As I said, we need to get you ears, but
Yeah.
but that suits you. And it's like we need to encourage the fun side. Brandy and I were talking about that too, and she said she was worried about it, that she's more impulsive, more almost kid-like in a lot of ways. But it's like that's actually one of the benefits, I would argue, that comes from it. You're not quite as afraid to let that side. We all have that side, all of us, although it's like all of us do, with or without brain injury. It's just that after a brain injury, you're a little more impulsive, you're a little more open, and
Yeah.
some of us are able to like reach for that. Whereas an adult, you're inhibited because you're afraid of what other people might think. And it's like after that, you're not quite as impeded by that, and it's okay to embrace that aspect of yourself, I think. And so it's one of those like gifts of brain injury, one of the few, that ability to, and that loss of excessive anxiety if you get it in the right place.
Yeah.
So you're more able to be, you. Um, those
Definitely.
things that you miss about yourself. Um, I do miss, some of those parts about, before, adulthood forces you to be all like wrapped too tight, and it's like as long as it's not too extreme, you can rediscover those fun parts of yourself. Those, simple, harmless things that oh, next door, they might think you, who cares? Seriously, who cares what they think next door? As long as you're not harming anyone else, yeah, it gives you the freedom to embrace that without sweating it. Darn it.
But
it,
yeah,
it, it brings joy back in your life, you know?
it really does. Like I've noticed days when I do videos like that, my good. So it definitely helps with the depression. That's for sure. Like, oh, I can do things I or and now I'm less self-conscious about it, which is weird because I have a lot more scars than I used to. So
But, the thing is, it's like, it's important. I think part of this too is it encourages, like people see and say, okay, so what? And I'm hoping that people who see this is another one of those things is who see that you have, a trach scar, or, tube feed scar, whatever. Who cares? It doesn't matter. You survived. You survived something that the majority of people don't survive.
yes.
It's like a soldier in a battle or whatever, because that's what it is. You are here when most people are not. For me, it's been so long, but you can still see where I hit. Um, well, I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, my skin's still discolored, and then there's like it's but I don't care. Um,
That's how I
and-
feel. I scar from the accident right on my face and I barely
right.
even for him. Well,
Yeah,
that's just
exactly. It's a sign of victory over death, to be blunt.
yeah.
Um, and it's like, and hopefully it encourages other survivors. You're young yet. You're in your 30s, your mid 30s. So I consider that young. Heck, I consider 50 young too, 50s, even 60s. Um, because age is here. And again, it's that positivity. Um, yeah, sometimes I get grumbly or depressed and stuff like that, but as long as I have more plus days than minus days, you know what I mean? Um,
Oh,
what are
yeah.
other things you do to stay positive?
I love playing like board games. That's one of my
Ah,
favorites. Things that kind of work my
yeah.
have been really good for me.
What
Puzzle, cooking, all of those things give me a sense of gratification. I love coloring too, coloring books.
adult coloring books are really a great, yeah, and they're good for focus and concentration. They're all of those are great rehab. What kind of board games are you a fan of?
Oh, King Domino, Clue.
Mm.
There's some Dungeons and board games
Ah,
I really like. Like there is so many games I like. It's
that would be something for the group to try, like on Friends of Brain Injury, like either D&D or like something. I haven't D&D'd in a billion years. So it's like I would love to do like some of that or Masquerade or something like that.
oh, great, is great. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. That is a
Yeah.
good game. That is a good game too. I got the original one back in 90, 91, something like that.
Yes. Yes. I had the original one.
Mhm.
Remembering the ring from it being absolutely devastating.
Yeah, yeah. And I had the original, the one that they sold, the way back where it had the picture of the god and all of that on the front from D&D. It would have been the second edition, not the first. Those who have the very first, but all the way back in 78, 79, my older brother, and he had some of the books, and so did I, and we would sometimes play, and we would have our friends over back. I mean, this is truly old school. This is Stranger Things kind of,
Yes. I love it.
Yep, but we had that set that they used them. I mean, man, that is old school stuff. But yeah, I think that would be fun to do some of those because you can do those kind of games on. I have Star Trek RPG. I have the old one and the new one. And so there's a lot of stuff, and many of these things are good to sharpen your imagination, creativity, and good for survivors. As long as you keep the tone more positive, you can help with, like deal with these things. I mean, back in the 80s, there was this silly like oh um mm, craziness about D&D and stuff like that. Part of the problem was those kids who made bad judgment calls, they were using LSD while playing the game. I would strongly advise, I mean, they were like, oh, it's demonic, whatever. No. If you do any game with enough LSD, you will have some problems with both performance and thinking. I would advise strongly against pairing LSD or PCP. That was the other one, the suicide and the that I would strongly advise against pairing LSD or PCP with mental health problems and any kind of game. Seriously, yeah.
That
Um,
makes complete sense to me. You don't need to be changing the chemicals in your brain
a
while
hallucinogen while playing any kind of game or whatever. We're actually doing pretty much of anything. I would strongly advise against. Um, yeah, so-called recreational pharmaceuticals, recreational pharmacology, I would advise strongly against. Um,
yeah.
there's a reason these are on Schedule 1 uh, in the US, or I think it's Schedule A in Europe. So definitely, especially with a brain injury, do not play with your own chemistry set. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. We do. I was talking to Kate, and we do want to talk a little bit about like recognizing junk science and good science. And for example, marijuana is being encouraged as like a panacea for everything. Does it have its place for certain things? Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff it doesn't have a place for. So it's a matter of knowing what is it is not and how to detect junk science versus validly researched science. And so that'll be something we'll be talking about, how to pick out those things that, yeah, this is something that is sound versus something that is not sound. And I think it's important, and I'm hoping the whole group eventually will be talking about like things that work and how to identify things that work versus maybe this is not. And we'll be talking
Yeah.
about that with Kate. But that wanders into the realm of science, medicine, pharmacology, all those kind of things. And, it's like it does require, basically as Carl Sagan called it, a BS detector. And it doesn't require sophisticated reasoning. It just requires a little street smarts, a little common sense. Kate and I have been survivors for a long time, and it's like we've seen a lot of bullshit come our way, and people try to sell stuff. Oh, hey, this will fix your brain injury. Unfortunately, the only thing that'll fix your brain injury is time and good quality rehabilitation. Now, you can do some of the rehab at home, quite a bit of it actually, but stuff we're talking about is stuff that'll help you both psychosocially, emotionally, cognitively. But there are no magic pills, there are no magic ray guns, there are no magic potions, there is no easy button to push. And that's really what everyone wants to do. So they don't have to do the work. Sorry,
Yeah.
that's just how it goes. And so,
Yeah.
anyway,
I know days
yeah.
I would wake up and just feel like old Emily before, but I'm starting to realize that that is just not parts for me.
Well, the thing is, you are still there underneath your personality is still there. Many people talk, and I've even used the terms old and new, Mark, but the truth is you're the essential personality, who you are, what you are, still there. It's just a matter of like finding compensatory components because as any good neuropsych would say, or good neurologist specializing in brain injury would tell you, usually what the brain injury does is it loosens old attributes of yourself, stuff that you were before, that maybe your parents kind of disciplined out of you, or your friends kind of did, or you did. And so stuff you had or were before kind of shows up again, and stuff that maybe you don't like as much, or that maybe was embarrassing, or whatever else. And so it's a matter of like trying to. So if you were irritable or always were a bit irritable, maybe that was the result. You were angry before you tended to act out, as we all do. You know, yeah, when you're a little kid, aggression is definitely something that's present in all of us.
Oh,
And issues of anger and things like every kid, those primary emotions are there for everybody, as well as fear, as well as joyfulness, and like all these things. But life experiences kind of, but then you do a brain injury and it takes the lid off that, which, life experiences mold and shape. So you pop the lid off, and those things that are there for everybody, are visible again, and maybe a little disinhibited, maybe like controls, but those things are there for everybody. And so they may be a little more visible. And so, or that if you were shy before, maybe you're like really tend to be isolating and shy after your brain injury. Or if you were just a little outgoing, and you kind of are not as much anymore now, you really, so it's like if you talked a little more than usual, now you really don't know when the heck to shut up. It's like, it's a magnification mainly, is what it is.
I've noticed that I was very impulsive as a teenager, and now it's like super impulsive again, but I maybe have a little bit more of a gauge on what's appropriate and what's not.
Right, right. And, it's like that was one of the things. Again, I talk about Brandy and Kate about like that being a good thing, as long as you're safe. That can be, make the people want to be around you. That can make, because they miss that aspect of themselves. And, again, as long as you don't do anything dangerous, as long as you're not, hey, I think I'll, get drunk and drive 100 miles an hour, or have sex with every guy or girl, or, as long as you're not doing stuff like that,
Yeah.
that can lead you to be a, much more outgoing, willing to take some risks, and, have fun with, like doing stuff that people are like, gee, I wish I could do that, and, because they're too scared or whatever. So, it's like that can actually, Brandy's roommate was, well, I was talking with her because they were right there with each other. And um she had, it was like her roommate said that she really likes that about Brandy. It's one of the good things. Don't run from it, embrace it, because it brings joy to other people. And I like being around my friend Kate because it's like she's much more open, and it makes me happy. Me, I tend to be, well, part of the signs of my disinhibition or my logorrhea. I don't shut the F up. And so I need a cue that, and yeah, I'm more impulsive and disinhibited since my injuries, but, you know,
Yeah. 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 I think for me, the biggest issue is finding my filter, because I will just say stuff and it's like,
oh,
it's so
yeah,
ill and so inappropriate. Like, oh boy, did I just say that out loud?
yeah, oh, yeah, that's a big one for a lot of us with the frontal lobe injuries. We'll say stuff and whoops, I didn't mean it to hurt somebody, especially if it's something that's kind of hurtful. It's like, whoops, I'm sorry. It just like, and with having problems with linguistic and pragmatics, which is basically the meanings of words as well as like tone and like how what it actually means versus, like what it's supposed to convey. It's like I don't mean it to mean it like in that way. Uh, that makes it hard too. And so you're like, I don't mean it to be that way. It's like, I meant this, not that. But I'm having, it's like, I didn't
What?
understand that
Yeah, there's a lot of that for me. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that just, I'm sorry. Like, that's not how I meant it to come off at all.
yeah, because it's like errors in understanding it too. Understand, and then people think, well, this person's cruel, mean, or stupid. We're all three.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, no, wait. It's like this is part of the disinhibition as well as some of the higher level cognitive processing problems.
Yeah.
So, so
Oh, yeah.
if you, and again, that relates to mental illness also, because, it's like when we're more irritable or when we deal with these other issues, then it feeds back on ourselves. And if you're depressed or whatever, then you're like, nobody can love me, blah, blah, all this other kind of stuff. And then that just cycles around again. And you're like, shit, you know?
Yes. How do I break this? I need to get out of this cycle. And do something, obviously. Whatever
Yeah,
I'm doing is working for me, but let's try something different.
yeah. And fortunately, you also are intelligent, which helps also. Um, most of the people, well, to be blunt, a lot of the people who function highly, who function well, they function well because they have high intelligence. You do. Uh, Kim does, Kate does, Blake does, Brandy does, Jenny does, Colleen does, just about everyone you see on our videos is
Yeah.
very intelligent. Ken does, but both Debs do, all of them, those who make the videos. And so they have cognitive reserve. It doesn't fix the problem, but your intelligence, even if you lose a few IQ points, Julie does, all of them do. And so it puts them a little, like, it gives them a little more leverage to fight some of their symptoms and to offset some of the psychiatric symptoms too, a little bit. I mean, it's not curing the brain injury, but their um, their primary problem is management of their abilities and intelligence. That's really what is the advantage of having a higher IQ. It doesn't mean that you won't have disabilities. You will after a brain injury, but at least, and Joyce is smart, really smart. So like they all are. But it's like, forgive me if I missed one because I have yet to meet anyone in the group who isn't smart. And that seems to be something else really big. I think like those who are of low intelligence who suffer brain injury just end up in the nursing home because they just can't adapt.
Yeah.
Um, and or they die. And that's a possibility too. I wonder, I don't think there's been any studies of that, but my suspicion is they either, I mean, Dawson's really smart, naturally skilled too. I forgot. It's not, Dawson's really smart. Those I wonder, those who are not, don't have enough cognitive reserve, which is basically extra to grant them flexibility.
Yes.
If if they simply don't survive. Um, those who don't have the dense connections and things like that. I don't know. That would be a study.
That would be an interesting one. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure, how it would be a very difficult study to do
Yeah.
for imaging and like all that other stuff, but to maybe look at records and things like that. That's hypothesis. I don't know if it's true. It's not meant to be a knock on anything or anyone. I'm just talking about like resources, cognitive resources and flexibility. I don't know. But
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there. I don't know. That is what the answer is. Not sure. All right. So thanks. We had an interesting kind of discussion, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
We'll see our friend Emily the elf, and we may need to like come up with with a name and ask people to come up with a name. If you have any questions or anything like that, please post, comment below. Um, like, subscribe, share with anyone who would benefit. Don't forget the bell icon. And bye. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.